which says page 3, but the page numbers restart after each lesson. Don't forget, Sister Jackie put these together from a series of separate booklets, so we don't have to waste print. All right, our text is chapter 10. We can turn to page 4 because we've moved pretty quickly through most of this chapter. And we are at, just as a recap, someone, if you wouldn't mind reading us verses 1 through 7, Leviticus 10, 1 through 7. And then somebody be ready to read Leviticus 10, 8 through 11. So we'll have one reader read 1 through 7, and then the next reader will read 8 through 11. Leviticus 10, 1 through 7.
Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, took their censers, put fire in them, and added incense. And they offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, contrary to his command. So fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. Moses then said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord spoke of when he said, 'Among those who approach me, I will show myself holy in the sight of all the people. I will be honored.'" Aaron remained silent. Moses summoned Mishael and Elzaphan, sons of Aaron's uncle Uzziel. "Come here, carry your cousins outside the camp, away from the front of the sanctuary." So they came and carried them, still in their tunics, outside the camp, as Moses ordered. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons Eleazar and Ithamar, "Do not let your hair become unkempt, and do not tear your clothes, or you will die, and the Lord will be angry with the whole community. But your relatives, all the house of Israel, may mourn for those the Lord has destroyed by fire. Do not leave the entrance to the tent of meeting, or you will die, because the Lord's anointing oil is on you." So they did as Moses said. Verse 8.
All right, who wants to read 8 through 11?
Unto Aaron, saying, "Do not drink wine nor strong drink, thou nor thy sons with thee, when ye go into the tabernacle of the congregation, lest ye die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations. And that ye may put difference between holy and unholy, and between unclean and clean. And that ye may teach the children of Israel all the statutes which the Lord hath spoken unto them by the hand of Moses."
All right, thank you. Okay, really quick, let's read, if someone wouldn't mind, 2 reference verses. One is Matthew 15, 7 through 9. Matthew 15, 7 through 9. And then John 4, 24. Matthew 15, 7 through 9. And then someone be ready to read after that John 4, 24. Matthew 15, 7 through 9.
Hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy about you, saying, "These people draw near to me with their mouths and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men."
And John 4, 24, someone?
God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in the spirit and truth.
Okay. We spent quite some time on Leviticus 10, 1 through 7, the sin of Nadab and Abihu. The last question in question 20 on page 4, are people free to worship now in any way they please? What do you think based on those 2 New Testament scriptures we just read? Can people worship any way they want to?
Yes.
One said yes, one said no. Can people worship any way they please?
But they're not supposed to.
No, can they? Not what are they doing? Are people free to worship
Oh, no.
any way that they please? You have the free will to do whatever you want to do, but just like Nadab and Abihu, right? But what are the instructions based on what Brother Rod read in his verse, John 4:24. God is spirit, and how do people have to worship?
Spirit and truth.
Must worship in spirit and in truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Right? And so when we know, when you partake of the Lord's Supper, I won't partake it with you until that day I partake it with you new in my Father's kingdom. We talk about 2 or 3 gathered. God's presence is there. Now these things in the New Testament are starting to make sense, right? So just because people are gathering in the verse that Brother Aaron read and saying, Lord, Lord, doesn't mean that God's presence is there, and doesn't mean that the worship service is in spirit and in truth. So just because Nadab and Abihu were priests, just because they were sanctified, just because they were going through the motions, didn't mean that they were worshiping the correct way. And we have the same instructions today. Now, people can freely do whatever they want to do, but the Bible says, vain do they worship me, the commandments of men, right? Lip service sounds good, but their hearts are far from God. So that's from God's point of view, right? So that means there must be a right way to worship and a wrong way. Now, I understand in this day and age, that's not popular. People want to worship any way they want to worship, right? Even in the churches of Christ. But there must be a right way and a wrong way, even if it was only based on the 2 verses Brother Aaron read and Brother Rod read. Just those 2 passages lead us to believe there must be a right way and a wrong way. And it's up to us to figure out what's right and what's wrong. That's a whole nother study. But the truth is, we know that from Nadab and Abihu situation, the same as New Testament, God gave explicit instructions about incense offering, burnt offering, and food offering, and what not to do and not to mix them. And they purposely did it together. Okay, question 21. We spent the tail end of last week on. Why is it especially important for priests to use neither wine nor strong drink when engaged in their work at the tabernacle? We talked about that a lot. We talked about the example they would lead. We talked about it being mind altering. We also talked about them dealing with fire and flammable items and dangerous, dealing with that as well as alcohol. The second part we didn't have time to touch on, so let's look at that one. What application, if any, can be made concerning the use of intoxicating beverages today? So back in Leviticus 10, 8 through 11, do not drink wine or intoxicating drink to the priest, you nor your sons. The priests his sons are a part of this priesthood. When you go into the tabernacles of meeting, lest you die, it shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that you may have distinguished between holy and unholy, between unclean and clean, that you may teach the children of Israel all the statutes the Lord has spoken to them by the hand of Moses. God specifically talking to Aaron directly this time, telling them, hey, when you go into the tabernacle of meeting, don't drink, don't get intoxicated, right? We know why from a literal standpoint. Last week we talked about job force and just secular job. Why wouldn't it be a good idea to be drunk on a job? The second half of 21 is asking us, what application, if any, could be made concerning the use of intoxicating beverages today? Right? What application, if any, could be used from this passage for our 2016 time frame? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
When you drink, he speak about drunkenness, because when you're drunk, you cannot concentrate. You lose focus, you lose the senses, you lose everything. You're just free, you know? So therefore, imagine, not too long ago, our Prime Minister in Trinidad, they had a conference meeting, and she was drunk, and she was mumbling, and next thing she fall off the stage, and that was worldwide because she was drunk. You can't be a leader, whether in the government or in the church or in school or wherever, and be drunk, because you cannot concentrate, you cannot focus, you're wavering all over the place. This is why the Bible said we have to be sober-minded.
So one thing that people don't think of in terms of drunkenness is the distinction or the divorce between drunkenness and responsibility, right? Everybody went out, everyone get drunk. Who's going to drive home? I'm not concerned about that. I'm more concerned with the fun I'm having in the 2, 3, 4 hours in the bar than the rest of my life. How are we getting home, right? When you get drunk, responsibility go out of the window. right? That's just a fact. Whether you like drinking or not, you have no control over your physical nature to have responsibility, right? It's like trying to drive sleepy. Anybody ever try to drive sleepy? You feel you drunk, right? You can't control nothing. Like, as much as you want to stay up, loud music, AC on or off, windows down, you say, I might as well be drunk because I can't even control the car or anything, right? Even though you have a responsibility to get home safe, you physically can't do it. That's the part of the problem, right? And people who want to focus on fun don't want to focus on responsibility. Now, there's a time and a place, right? In this specific example, he told them, don't drink before you go into the tabernacle of meetings, right? But people want to have fun 24/7. That's what's normally young people difference between older people. Older people know they got responsibility, bills, so they can't have fun. Young people, teenagers and 20s, feel like fun should be 24/7. I don't know where humanity gets that concept from, but nobody promised that you should have fun 24/7. As an adult, looking back at your teenagers in 20-something years, you can attest to the time you wasted chasing fun, but it have no value long term, right? Financially and physically. That's the God honest truth. You go out 7 days a week for 10 years between, let's say, 18 to 28, and by the time you get to 28, 29, if you live, you'll understand that physically and financially, you blew your 20s. That's a fact. You looked a certain way and fit into something at 18, and at 28, you thinking, oh, this don't fit no more. Because that type of fun lifestyle will only deteriorate your body physically and financially. These are facts. It don't matter if you're in church or out of church. This is a human fact. So when you look at it from that standpoint, life is a marathon, not a sprint. Meaning, like, you looking as a young mind, we're looking at snapshots, moment by moment. As an older mind, you're looking at a totality. Like, where do I see myself if I live this decade? But as a young person, you're thinking, what am I doing tonight? Right? So it's a difference in the concept. When you're intoxicated, that concept of longevity is gone because your brain physically cannot focus that far out. It can only focus on the here and now. So when you look at it from that standpoint, there's aspects of certain things in life, whether you have the liberty to do them or not in Christianity, everything you do in this world got to be done in moderation. You eat enough fruit, it'll make your stomach hurt. You think, oh, I heard fruit was good for you. Yes, sweetheart, but a couple pieces, not 35 pieces of watermelon is not good for you, right? People have to understand everything in life is about balance. And that's the difference that people don't understand. Now, whatever your vice is, you may not have the ability to have balance, right? Somebody could drink one glass of wine or one beer and go on with their life. Somebody else, just the sweat dripping down the glass, they get so excited and their heart is pounding and they're thinking of the 10th beer. You're thinking, hey, why are you getting all riled up? You didn't even taste it yet. That is just how it is, right? You can't put people down, feel like you're better than them because you don't struggle with that. People like what they like. There's no getting around it, but you got to understand that if drinking is your thing, put religion aside, because it's easy to attack God and say, oh, you know, God don't want me to have fun. No. Go have your fun every single day and tell me how long that lasts. Because whether you're religious or not, if you were to drink excessively every day, physically, financially, after a period of time, you would destroy yourself. So if that's the case, do you see a good idea to have that in moderation? Then somebody can come back and say, yeah, right, alcoholics and things like that would be like, I lost my family, my job, all these sort of things. We have these examples, not only biblically, but also in the world, but how do we interpret them, right? In church, me personally, I feel like we have to do a better job of explaining drinking the way we're talking about it right now, right? Just to tell somebody don't do it, just not to do it, to me is a very low way of Christianity, right? A deep level Christianity is explaining why it's not a good idea. Just like telling someone not to do something just because your mom said not to do it is a very young-minded concept, right? That's usually for babies. Once you get older as teenagers and in your 20s and 30s, your parent is always going to be your parent. They explain to you why you shouldn't do things because your brain is more mature, right? And that's what this section is. Mostly when you talk about drinking, it's never in the context of coming to the church drunk. But this context, we can see, based on what Sister Beulah was talking about, there's a level of responsibility that all of us as adults have that drinking excessively robs you from, right? So if you have responsibilities like a family, getting home safe is a big deal. You say, oh yeah, I really wasn't thinking about that, right? So you need to make sure that when you go out and have, can you stop to make it home, right? Oh, I wasn't thinking that far out, right? You know how many people get hurt or die from people who are drunk, and it seems like the drunk people live. Drunk people get out the car and be like, "Ooh, that was a tough one." Everybody else dead, and they was thinking I wasn't even drinking. I was just driving or walking or riding my bike, or I was just a passenger. Sometimes in life, bad decisions rob other people, and then you get to vehicular manslaughter and all those sort of things. There's so many examples we can use of why being drunk is not a good idea, regardless of biblical. People, when you start talking about drinking in church, immediately want to attack biblical. I say it's not about biblical. If that's the case, leave here now and go get drunk for 10 years straight. Then they're going to say, no, I didn't mean that. What you mean? If it's that good for you, keep doing it. Everything, even overeating, can kill you. Everything has to be done in moderation in this world. That's the way the world is designed. Don't blame God for that. Body can only take so much fun. That's the God honest truth. You may want to have fun 24/7, but you can't. Young people don't know that they can't. That's why youth, they say, is wasted on the young, right? Because they think every day they wake up, oh, I could do that again. Okay, so we are doing it again and keep doing it. And then all of a sudden you think to yourself, oh, I need sleep. Yeah, sleep. Remember naps that older people talk about? Yeah, I didn't know what a nap was, but now I need rest. Because the body can only take so much fun. It was not designed to sustain fun eternally for forever, right? Because it's physical and you will decay and everyone has an expiration date and those sort of things. But when you look at it from its totality, a couple of things that we must do in scripture is make sure that when you're talking about social issues like this, and an example like this is what you're using, you go down the right path of argument, right? A lot of people I've heard in religious settings that are arguing against drunkenness will scoop drinking in and then say, now you can't drink because God's told Aaron. First of all, time out. First of all, he's talking to Aaron as a priest and in a specific setting. So when you're doing a Bible study or answering people in the world's question, make sure you use the right verse for the right question, because somebody with a smart mouth gonna be like, yeah, but that just said only in the tabernacle of meetings. What about when it's not in the tabernacle? Now you spent 15 minutes going on this rant about why Aaron shouldn't drink, and someone asks a question. There's other verses to bring out a total concept like be sober, be vigilant. Your adversary, the devil, walks around like a roaring lion seeking who he may devour. Now you can tell somebody, oh, okay, that verse kind of made more sense because it makes it seem like the devil is always out to get me. And when I'm intoxicated, I can't function and prepare myself. That's a better verse to use. Same thing with singing and instrumental music. People always talking about going to the verse with, oh, singing songs in your, first of all, singing the songs in your hearts to one another. That verse have nothing to do with worship service. In the context, it's talking about which we don't do. Calling each other up during the week. Wednesday, Bible study, when people are happy, when people are sad, singing to encourage one another. A better example is to start from where they're using, David used it, and then go into Old Testament and see where God said, nope, I don't like these things anymore, and never instituted it again. Oh, now people say, oh, I understand. I see a starting point. I see an ending point, and I don't see it going again. As Bible students, we're in Bible studies like this. Make sure you're grabbing your tools, but you're preparing your mind, right? Bible study is like boot camp. It's like practice. It's like training camp to remember how to answer people's questions. So when Paul tells Timothy, hey, be ready in season and out of season, right? Here is the place where we can ask our question so that we don't set ourselves up for failure. A lot of times as Christians, we have the right answer in our heart and our mind, but we forget the exact verse. And we're so hung up on remembering the verse, now we forget the application, and then the person is saying, what are you talking about? I don't even understand what you're saying. Focus more on the application, right? Even if you don't remember exactly where, you at least can say, hey, I know somewhere Sister Beulah says something about be sober. I can go on Google and type in the Bible, be sober and vigilant. Google will do the rest for you. But if you don't remember the sober concept and you're hung up on this verse, it's going to be hard to sell somebody in 2016. So it's not to say, oh, that means you can be drunk because this is talking just to Aaron and going to the tabernacle of meetings. No, what it means is this is a good verse to use against drunkenness that most people don't use because of the responsibility piece, right? Because some people aren't going to be persuaded by the be sober verse because they're going to be like, but that's just whatever, whoever wrote that book telling me that. But when you start talking about responsibility, and last week we said, let's say any job, forget about a priest, right? Prime minister, secretary, advertising, marketing, what job would it be okay? We talked last week outside of a bartender, and even then a bartender get drunk and start forgetting, not ringing people out. It's not a good idea because of responsibility. Once you get people to see sin don't make sense long-term in the world, it's easier to persuade them for spiritual things. But sometimes we spend so much jumping that you lost people because don't forget, they don't believe what you're saying, right? Faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word of God, right? You as a believer trying to convince a non-believer off of one verse, very rarely will it happen that way. You have to convince them off of application. Prime example, Day of Pentecost, Peter and the rest, they brought them from the beginning up to Jesus, right? So when it got to Jesus, remember in Acts chapter 2, he starts talking about Moses, Abraham, David, and he laid a picture. And then he said, you see this picture of this Messiah that's here? Everyone was like, yeah. Then he said, that's Jesus. Then they were cut to the heart. But if he would have been like, hey, remember Jesus was so nice, and I mean, I don't know, they said crucify him, right? They took Jesus out for a second to bring an entire picture to them and then said, that picture you're looking at is Jesus. That's what we have to do better when we're looking at converting or talking to people nowadays. One type of Bible study will not work for every person. It would be great if it could, right? We just keep studying the same couple of sentences, memorize them, and say every person, no matter who you meet, say this 2, 3, 4 sentences, and they'll be saved. It don't work like that. People coming from different angles. So this drinking, people shy away from. I never have shied away from it because I feel like it's one of the most powerful, especially with young people, most powerful tools, because most people going to associate what's going to come out your mouth is, you're going to tell me drinking is wrong. And if you said, nope, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you that being drunk is wrong. Now you already have their attention because they were prepared to think, oh, I thought church and drinking mean wrong. You say, no, I never said that. Where you heard that from? And they'll tell you, oh, this person. Then you say, oh, let me look at a couple verses. And then that will get their concept and their interest sparked, and you can lead them down to a better study. But if you pounce on them, remember, you're basically condemning what people are doing. Obviously, people will be on the defensive, right? You already believe what you believe. But never forget, in a Bible study or a conversation with family or at coworkers or friends, they don't believe that, right? You trying to help them believe that. If you pounce on them, how will you ever grow their faith or their belief? So when we look at this as an example overall, I feel like it's a good example. Is it the only example? No. But in a totality, or if you feel, man, I haven't been getting anywhere with people in the way I've been talking about drinking and drunkenness, this is a good example because it's looking at how much sense does this make, right? And people don't normally equate sin and sense in the same conversation, right? It's like, I'm not thinking about sin. I'm just thinking about fun. Yeah, but how much sense does this particular wrong thing you're doing make to your body and to your surroundings? And once you get people down that path, you'll be able to kind of get them closer to where you want to be. Now, they may still not believe you, but at least they're leaving thinking about their life. Because when you're talking about church, people will say, oh, that's good for you, right? Oh, you go to church, that's good for you. You got to make them think about their own life. Because Peter said, remember this picture here? That's Jesus who you crucified. And that's when people was like, oh, because I was putting the blame on the Roman government, but I forgot. I said, thumbs up, crucify him. And once they realized that they took part in the death of Jesus, now they want to be saved. Same thing with people. You got to get off of you and get the attention on them, but you can't bash them. So it's very delicate. Bible studies are delicate. I don't think we understand how delicate Bible studies are, right? You either, in a couple of sentences, can spark somebody's interest or turn somebody off to ever hear about religious things ever again. That's how powerful we are in the plan of salvation. So that's why I tell people all the time, especially new converts, try to get more on the concept than the actual verse. It will take years to start memorizing verses, but you can memorize concepts, and then you'll be okay. All right, let's look at verses 12 through 15. Somebody read us Leviticus 10, 12 through 15. What does that say?
Moses said to Aaron and his remaining son Eleazar and Ithamar, take the grain offering left over from the food offerings prepared without yeast, and present it to the Lord, and eat it beside the altar, for it is eat it in the sanctuary area, because it's your share and your son's share of the food offering presented to the Lord. For so I have been commanded. But you and your sons and your daughter may eat the breast that was waved and the thigh that was presented. Eat them in a ceremonially clean place. They have been given to you and your children as your share of the Israelites' fellowship offerings. The thigh that was presented and the breast that was waved must be brought with the fat portions of the food offering to be waved before the Lord as a wave offering. This will be the perpetual share for you and your children, as the Lord had commanded.
Okay. What specifically? First of all, before we get into that question, Moses tells Aaron, how many sons did he talk to in verse 12? He said he spoke to Aaron and how many sons? Two, right? And then sadly, who are left, right? I mean, we know the other two gone, right? So we understand the mourning process was supposed to be over what God did, not who did it and what they did. But you're still in a worship setting, so sadly, worship got to go on, right? Even though he lost his sons. We talked about that for a lot over the last couple of weeks. So that's verse 12. But specifically, question 22, what of the sacrifice were to be eaten by the priest? What specific pieces of the sacrifice were the priest supposed to eat? Verse 12 and verse 14. Okay, good. Before that, though, in 12. Grain. Okay, grain offering that remains from the offering made by the fire to the Lord. Remember back at the end of chapter 9, the fire came out, it grabbed up. Whatever was left was for Aaron and his two sons, right? Eat it without leaven besides the altar, for it is most holy, right? Because God's presence was just there. Okay, you shall eat it in a holy place, right? All right, because it's your due and your son's due, which is portions, depending on your translation, of the sacrifice made by fire to the Lord, for so I have been commanded, right? Because the people brought it, God grabbed most of it and left some for the priest, because this is their job, right? This is their duty, so this is their payment for their job. Their food is taken care of. Okay, verse 14, the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of the heave offering you shall eat in a clean place, you and your sons and your daughter with you, for they are your due and your sons' due, which are given from the sacrifices of peace offering of the children of Israel. So we understand that the people gave this offering, a percentage of that offering God took, which is the bulk, and a small percentage will go to the priest, right? Now, when we get to Jesus's day, they totally changed it, because the priests took their portion first in Jesus's day, right? They took the best first. Then they gave the main-looking, broken-winged doves, the blind-eyed sheep. Then they sacrificed those. But here, when we looked at chapter 9, they had to give without blemish, right? And God is saying, whatever's left you can have. Don't shortchange me. But what happened was priesthood went from a servant job to a prominent financial job by Jesus' day because of stealing, right? They start taking people's offerings, which nowadays you get into TV evangelists, right? You got TV evangelists riding in jets and driving expensive cars and trips, and you got people in the pew who never will own a home ever in their life. How are people that duped into thinking that's okay, right? Like that's the concept that don't make sense. Then you have the flip side where you have some Christians feel, okay, well, if that's the case, nobody in spiritual leadership should get any monetary compensation. Wrong, right? Even Paul talks about that. Paul got to the point where he said, am I robbing you? Right? Am I robbing you? Do you not owe me your Christianity? And people say, oh, okay, sorry, I lost the concept. These things in today's time period are big deals, right? Because some people feel strong. It's like politics. Some people feel strongly on the left or the right. You got to find a middle ground, right? You got to understand that anything that somebody do that their time is dedicated to spiritual thing, you got to, the Bible say, at least give them praise, bare minimum, right? Blessed are the feet that bring the tidings of good news, because somebody stopped what they were doing to do something else. But you can't be Judas or Ananias and Sapphira and say, oh, I'm going to put my hand in the collection plate and take my couple hundreds and $20s and the dollars and $5, then I give to God, right? Life cannot work that way. But when people see how people are reacting in a spiritual setting, it's like Simon the sorcerer. He thought, ooh, like that, and start doing that. People give more money the more I do, the same way as in this world, right? People hear about church or been to a church and they feel like, oh, I'm charismatic, or I can convince people. I want to start a church. And then they start a church, and then people give offering. And some churches say, lock the doors, send the plate around again. We need more and more. And then at the end, they count, say, ooh, this was a good come up. And in America, why is it a come up? Because tax free. Because when you go to the government, you say, oh, I'm a holy person. I can't pay no taxes. So now I don't have to pay no taxes. I can buy things. I can do write-offs. So I'm winning across the board. But where is God's word and God's people? Right? Disconnect. So this is still just as prevalent as the drinking social issue. And a lot of people are turned off of religion because of this concept right here, because what church either they went to or the things they see, the people in leadership abuse money. So if you start talking about go to church, the first thing some people are going to think about is manipulation and stealing. So they're going to be like, nope, that's where crooks go. Because if you turn on the TV or if you go into certain churches, it do look like a very crookish environment, because you got a disconnect, just like politics. You got people running the state blessed, right? Flying all over the country, living in different locations, and you got people in the state on welfare. So it's a huge disconnect. Help me understand. The same way with church. So when we look at it from that, it may not be a big deal to us, right? Go back to Bible study mode. You may go into the Bible study mode ready to teach and preach baptism, which is good. But someone may say, I actually understand the baptism part. My problem is the church part with money. So sometimes in a Bible study, it's best to find a way to see where are their hangups, right? Ask them about their religious experiences. And if they start talking about money, you can say, oh, you know what? Look at this example. And if you show somebody this, they'll be like, oh, I know most ministers not doing that. They taking the leftovers. Nah, most ministers taking the first. They taking the big piece of chicken, and they let whatever is left to pay the building or whatever else, and then there's no money for nobody else. And you say, yes, it's not supposed to be that way. Then you go into Jesus' day, Jesus turning over. Now you would get them to see, oh, Jesus didn't like that, right? So if he didn't like that then, how do you think he feel about now? Now if we went to the verse that Brother Aaron read and the Brother Rod read about vain worship and about spirit and truth, now you get them to see, oh, there must be a right way to worship and a wrong way. But you got to get them there, right? If you just jump to a conclusion, sometimes follow the process. So this is another social example. Different parts of the world or different parts of the country, it may not be a big deal. But to certain people, this is the main thing that keep them out of walking into a church, is because they feel like those in power are crooks, and they look at it from the way the Pharisees were and the way TV evangelists are, instead of the way God set it up in the beginning. You sacrifice for the people and you get your due last. Let me come and grab mine first, right? Let me decide what I like from this offering, and whatever's left is what you can grab. But sadly, people abuse that. Okay, let's look at 16 through 20. Someone read that for us. Leviticus 16 through 20.
When Moses inquired about the goat of the sin offering burned up, he was angry at Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's remaining sons, and asked, "Why didn't you eat the sin offering in the sanctuary area? It is most holy. It was given to you to take away the guilt of the community by making atonement for them before the Lord. Since his blood was not taken into the holy place, you should have eaten the goat in the sanctuary area, as I commanded." Aaron replied to Moses, "Today they sacrificed their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord. And such things as this have happened to me. Would the Lord have been pleased if I had eaten the sin offering today?" When Moses heard this, he was satisfied.
Okay, question 23. Why did Moses become angry with the priest? First of all, which specific priests? They were his what? Relation to him, because he was related to his nephews. Why was he angry at his nephews? In the first couple of verses, like 16, 17, and 18.
They didn't eat their sin offering in the sanctuary area.
Okay, they didn't eat it in the right place. So remember, we made a big deal what they ate, right? Leftovers, and where they ate it. It said, verse 13, "You shall eat it in a holy place, because it's your due, for so I have commanded," right? They didn't eat it in the holy place. So he got upset. But what did Aaron say to convince him of why they did what they did? Right? That's verse 19. What did Aaron say as a counter to say, no, here's why. And Moses was content, verse 20. What did Aaron say to his brother of here's why they ate it in the wrong place?
Because such things like that had happened to him before. So would the Lord have been pleased if he had eaten the sin offering himself?
Right. So think of what had happened, right? Transpired, right? A lot of bad things had happened. Don't kill us. We didn't do the incense or the strange fire. We just didn't eat it in the right place. Like, this been a tough hours, whatever, right? Like, give us a little chance here, because we just getting going with this. Now, this lets you know, same thing with Peter and the New Testament, Ananias and Sapphira, right? Everybody was selling their stuff, right? All these things. And then they said, Peter's point was, you didn't have to give everything just because other people, but the problem was you lied about it, right? So when you look at it from this standpoint, when we talked about they were leading the people and they were doing it blatantly in front of everybody, disrupting everyone's worship, right? That was a sin that was visible to everyone, and it impacted worshiping in spirit and in truth, and it brought sin into the worship. These two nephews are eating, this is after worship, in the wrong way, right? So it's a difference between, right? We know sin is sin, but the consequence of sin is different. It's a difference between up here, whether song leader or scripture reader or preacher or Lord's Supper or passing, and cussing the congregation out, or you cussing somebody out in your car, right? Because you cussing people out in the middle of worship, everybody is distraught. Like, I don't know what happened. You hear somebody cuss at a picnic or something, you also, okay, you know, they'll get there. It's a different, right? Wrong is wrong, but the consequence would be way different, right? Because you would have to say to the man, you got to sit out a couple Sundays because you broke everything about worship. Every time somebody see you, they're going to be thinking like, oh, is he going to do it again? It's a different setting, right? That's the difference between the two brothers that died and the two brothers that lived. Wrong is wrong. The instructions to the instructions. But to Aaron's point, Aaron said, look, this day they have offered their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord, and such things have befallen me, right? If I had eaten the sin offering today, would I have been accepted in the sight of the Lord, right? You got to think of your heart, your mind. We talk about that with Lord's Supper. Jesus talked about that Sermon on the Mount. You come and you have your offering. You think, man, I have something against my brother, or my brother has something against me. Let me leave my offering and make that situation right, because the offering, the worship would not be done in the right way, right? Some people come to worship and they're like, you know what? I'm going to be honest with myself first. My heart and my mind is not in a place to partake of Lord's Supper. So let me get myself right. I'm going to pray during that time, or give me a couple of minutes, or they're trying to get their relationship back, right? We can't pounce on them and say, hey, you're going to hell. You didn't take Lord's Supper this Sunday, right? Because that person is working out their own salvation in fear and trembling. Now, if you see 30 Sundays in a row, hey, brother, why are you not taking Lord's Supper? That's a different concept. Aaron's concept was this day, right? This one time. Like, don't be so angry with it, right? We have to do a better job of that in Christian to Christian relationships. And though sometimes we react to Christian and Christian the same way we react to the world, it can't be, right? Somebody could have did something wrong in front of you as a Christian because of a variety of things that happened to them that day, right? Does it make it right? No, but your response should be different, right? Because first you should say, are you okay? Right? Physically, spiritually, emotionally. Someone may say, no, I'm not, right? Like, here's what happened. And now you say, okay, I'm not condoning what you did, but I actually can see why you did what you did based on the day you had. If I would have had that same day, I probably would have did the same sin that you did. It's perspective. We got to be more conscious of how we talk to one another, Christian to Christian, right? Some of us have no filter in our mouth and feel like we can say anything to anybody because we Christian. Please don't do that, because what you're going to do is you're going to run up against someone who's not that strong, and they're going to put both their hands on you. Then you can say, oh, brother, sister hit me. And then we say, what happened? And then we think, child, it hit you too if you would have said that, right? Think about what come out of your mouth. Now, you may come from an environment where your family yell at each other, or you used to saying whatever you want to say. But when you come into a church setting, do not interact like that, because you don't know what day the other person had. People coming to worship right now, car could have broke down, could have got into an argument in the family, could have had bad news, so they already on edge. And you come out your mouth sideways or slit, and you set that person's fuse off. Hey, that person reacted angry. Okay, they're wrong, but you're wrong too, because you started that. And that's the difference that we have to see is it's all in our approach. Jesus spent a lot of time talking about that, right? We got to go to each other in love, right? You go and you hug people. Someone don't seem that interested. Stop being that upset. Maybe they're having a bad day. That part I don't understand. I go to hug Auntie Michelle and she don't hug me tight. Now I'm saying I go tell David, oh, Auntie Michelle in a bad mood. Mind your business. What could have been happening in her mind? How that impact me? Now, oh, Auntie Michelle don't like me, David. Why? She only pat my back once instead of twice. What? Like, there's 50-something people in a room on Sunday, and we looking for the same interaction from every person when we all came from wherever we came from just today. Forget this week, this month, this year. Some of us woke up in a great mood today, and some of us life happened and we're not in a good mood, right? Does it mean you could always be in a bad mood? No, but it means be mindful of how we interact with one another. Give your brothers and sisters a chance, right? Give each other a fighting chance to be like, by the time we get to the closing prayer, let me be in a better mood. But right now, I'm just barely making it here. I barely got to worship. And then once I hear the sermon, the Lord's Supper, the song, now that hard exterior gets worn away, and I start thinking, forgot I'm a Christian, thank God. But sometimes we got to give each other a shot. Give people the benefit of the doubt. If people didn't like you, they would not hug you or touch you at all. So don't assume, well, one pat. Last week she gave me 3 pats, so that must mean she liked me way less. Don't think of it that way. Look at it as a totality and say, maybe something could be wrong. Let's move on. Now, if you look at, oh, every week I go to hug this person and they bow or run, now we got a problem, right? But if one week somebody may be like, yo, I didn't shower this morning. I don't want to hug. So when the minister say everyone hug, I'm going to go to the bathroom. Now you think, oh, Brother Ellis don't like none of us anymore. I could be like, no, it's because I stink. No disrespect, but I didn't shower. It could be anything, right? Use these comical examples to let us look at real situations. Because really, when somebody snapped at you, if you snap back, what will happen, right? It won't be a positive, right? So at least one person in the situation going to have to be the bigger person and be like, okay, let me calm down, give that brother or sister a benefit of the doubt, and let's see how they are later. I'll pray for them or whatever, right? React more that way. Is that easy? No, because I told you, if you snap at somebody, You're going to hit somebody who's not there yet, and they're going to devour you. I have seen that in spiritual Christian to Christian settings. That's why I always say, watch what come out your mouth. But if you don't, and you're the recipient of that, and it hits your ears, do your best. What the Bible says, live peaceably. Like, you got to find some way to be the peacemaker, because that's who Jesus is looking for, right? Looking for those who will be in conflict, but still establish peace. So here we applaud Aaron. Why? Because Aaron said, look at it from this perspective, right? Not condoning what they did, but look at it from the totality. And then it said Moses was content. A lot of conflict could be resolved if we have better communication, right? If somebody able to say, look, here's why I did what I did. Same thing with young people and parents. Parents know that, right? If young people come to you and be like, look, I'm going to be honest with you. Here's what I did. It was wrong, this, and this. That person's consequence may be less than if you ask them, did you do that? They say, nope. Now you're thinking you lying to me, right? It's all in the communication. Hey, mom or dad, I did this. It was dead wrong. Here's why I did it. Not saying it was good, but here's why. That's why when you go through things, it's best, we talked about this, I think a couple Wednesdays ago, to apologize. Hey, this is why I did this. Sorry. Like, it's not condoning it. My mind was here. It was wrong. It was dead wrong. I'm going to try not to do it again. The other person will feel way better. Sometimes we feel sorry, but don't verbalize the sorry. And then we seeing each other and it's awkward. And now you ducking each other when both of y'all want to resolve the conflict. Why? Someone be the bigger person and say, look, at this day, month, year, I was in a bad space. You caught me at a bad time. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Now I'm in a better space, right? Don't mean the relationship may ever be bad. And that's my fault. But I apologize. Right? I was not supposed to react that way. When we look at it that way, just like verse 20, it will ease the situation, right? And that's the thing. But when we're so hard and difficult, some people just rather be upset. It's hard to get to that harmony or that peace. In the closing, everyone knows we're not perfect, right? So just because you heard the instructions from God one time doesn't mean you're going to implement them. Every Sunday we hear instructions, right? And we leave here and go do wrong, every one of them. So it takes time, right? A new convert has that as the biggest lesson. Don't mean just because you baptized last night, today you're sinless, right? Impossible. It takes a process. It's going to take these kids some time to get to where they need to be. Now, what we know they won't do is mess up with the fire, because they seen their brothers drop dead for that. But now the eating was something they messed up, right? But they're saying, oh, at least we didn't do the fire. Oh, hold up. Don't be that upset. I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying. That's the thing, right? Certain things you conquer in your life, you say, okay, at least I don't do those things, but I slipped up on these things today. Don't beat yourself up for it. Don't beat other people up for it. Just be like, I'm going to do better tomorrow. That should be the attitude of Christianity. It's like, if I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to do better. I'm going to change my mindset, apologize to God, and try to do better. If we live like that, we'll be in harmony. And like verse 20 says, not only it says Moses will be content, but God will be content, because under the new covenant, that's grace in Jesus' blood. Well, all right, let's close in a word of prayer, and we'll transition into our worship service. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful and blessed day. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to petition up a word of prayer to you at this time, and thank you for allowing us to study your word. We're thankful for all that you have blessed us with through these examples, that we were able to pick some social topics or hot topics of today and get some application for how we can interact with some of the same things in our day and time that Moses and Aaron and the children of Israel had to deal with in their day and time. We ask that you allow us to be stronger in the knowledge of your word, and grant us wisdom as we know you freely give it to those that ask. As we transition into worship service, we pray that our worship be done in spirit and in truth, and that you be with those traveling here without the loss or harm of any. God bless us, each and every one of us, and forgive us of our sins. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, thank you for everyone's comments and our scripture readings.